Hi, I'm James McGuire, and today we're talking about hybrid cloud and hyperconverged infrastructure. To discuss that, I'm joined by one of the industry leading experts on the topic. With me is Wendy M. Pfeiffer, CIO of Nutanix. Wendy, really honored to have you with us today.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
And congratulations on making it to Friday. That itself is quite an achievement these days.
I know I'm just holding it together. I hope all of the controls I have in place outlast this interview.
Right. And also, I managed to look at the date the other day. It's February of 2021. That date sounds so futuristic. It's like we should all have our jetpacks by now, but in fact, we're struggling with some pretty basic stuff. What's up with that?
Well, in some ways, the future sneaks up on you. For example, we're talking over public internet.
Right.
I'm on my kid's gaming computer. We're using these sort of amazing, devices.
Right.
I've got a computer right here, in my
Right.
phone,
A
right?
powerful one. Right.
Yeah, a supercomputer. So a lot of the coolness that we imagined in the future is here, but what we may have lost is some of the imagination. And I will tell you, I have an area where I am so interested right now. I'm interested in something called steampunk.
Oh yeah, I've heard of steampunk. It's got that really cool look, sort of a retro cool look.
Yeah. So what it is, it's a real thing. Back in the Victorian era, they decided that like steam energy is this new energy, heat up water
Right.
and it can power things. And
Right.
so there was all of these imaginative inventions based on steam power, and then
Hmm.
electrical power came along. And
Right.
so steam power went the way of the lemming. Suddenly we've got this electrical power. But all of the imagination, these amazing devices and the art and the metaphysical components were not incorporated into the designs for electrical energy. It was much more about efficiency. And
Right.
so meanwhile, there's this whole treasure trove of invention that
Hmm.
includes artistic layers and metaphysical layers, and also some really interesting physics and other capabilities. I
Hmm.
think we're in an age like that right now with
Hmm.
technology, where the pandemic has led us to this moment where our old ways of using technology are suddenly immediately outmoded,
Hmm.
and yet we're having to find imagination for how we move forward with these cool technologies we're already using.
Right.
The technology is there. It's our lack of imagination that makes this not the cool Jetsons.
Well, I mean, maybe there's a parallel as we talk about hybrid cloud and HCI. There may be a parallel between the steampunk world and the shift to electricity. Not sure. We'll see if we can sneak that metaphor in. I'd love it if we can.
We'll
Uh,
try, man.
so,
Now, challenge accepted.
all right. So I've got one of my officially insightful questions. So if I look back at the prehistoric history of the clouds, like way back in the year 2012, many pundits said, hey, the public cloud is going to make the data center obsolete. But here we are in 2021, the data center is very much alive, which means, of course, that hybrid cloud is very much alive because it connects a data center and the public cloud. So we're in this period of rapid shifting. I mean, Gartner predicts that by 2025, 80% of data centers will, go the way of the dodo bird. They just won't be with us anymore. They'll be shut down. Of course, Gartner's not always right.
Mm.
I guess what is your sense of where companies are in their cloud journey? Is hybrid cloud the default now? Is the war over and hybrid cloud is won, or is this just a transition?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. First of all, I love John Madden, and John Madden always says that pundits are guys who aren't in the game.
Right.
And I have a lot of respect for the pundits, but most of them sort of over index on technology for technology's sake. The
Hmm.
thing about IT, my sport, is that it's this confluence of technology and operations. It's finding ways to effectively and efficiently operate technology to enable businesses to do their jobs and to enable employees of businesses to be productive. And it's very much a blend of commercial, financial, operational, and technical.
Hmm.
In that sense, for the last 30 years in IT, we have had a function called IT portfolio management. It's just like a stock option, not
Hmm.
stock option, but financial stock portfolio management.
Right. Allocation, et cetera. Right.
Right. Yeah, the idea of this is that I have a range of technologies and operating modes at my disposal. And
Hmm.
depending on business conditions and so on, there'll be times when I'm investing in some, divesting in others, holding on some. And my job as a CIO is to manage that mix and manage
Hmm.
that in a way that my company meets its delivery objectives and its financial objectives.
Right.
In that sense, the ideal model for delivering IT in that mode is hybrid, right? It's a mix. There are some
Hmm.
components that are on premises because there are some cost advantages. There are some operating advantages to that. There are some components that are operating in public cloud because there are some scale out advantages and some speed advantages to that. And
Hmm.
in fact, then there are components that we would choose to operate in mixed mode. What's held us back in the past is not a lack of having the model to operate that way, but it's been a challenge with technology, especially monitoring and management, cybersecurity, and also financial models like long-term ELAs from vendors that
Hmm.
preclude us from actually being able to have service mobility, to be able to think about how business conditions and technology conditions are dictating where and how we should consume resources and where and how we should run.
Hmm.
So there was a great survey that was just completed by Vance and Bourne. It's the third year in a row. It's called the Enterprise Cloud Index. And
Aha.
in this Enterprise Cloud Index, every year they ask more than 3,000 CIOs, CTOs, VPs and above in IT around the world, what is their ideal operating model?
Hmm.
And every year the results come back very strongly. This year, the 2020 survey, 86% of the 3,400 people polled said that hybrid is the ideal operating model for me.
Hmm.
That's current data. Now, this doesn't mean I don't want to be in public cloud.
Right.
This doesn't mean I only want to be on premises. What this means is I want the optionality to run workloads in the place that makes the most sense at the time and to change things up. And in order to do that, we need some components. One of the components is we need underlying infrastructure that makes flexible use of the associated resources. And that's the sort of the magic of hyperconverged.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
hyperconverged infrastructure essentially says, I can treat my on-premises infrastructure the same way the public cloud vendors do. I can dynamically, elastically assign resources to the workloads based on the needs of those workloads. And
Hmm.
so if I'm operating in a mode where I can do that both on premises and in public cloud, then I'm truly operating in a hybrid mode. And there's all kinds of benefits and economies of scale to that. What,
Hmm.
not the least of which is that I can begin to do software defined things.
Right.
I can very easily spin up infrastructure, whether on premises or in public cloud. And I can do that, writing the code once and reusing it everywhere. This thing that IT calls infrastructure as code.
But implicit in the idea of hybrid, and I definitely see your point about, hybrid is such a dominant role because we are pulling together so many disparate elements these days. We need hybrid, but implicit in the idea of hybrid is that there is this thing called the data center, which
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get the kind of love that it used to get. And some companies go, oh, gosh, I wish we could get rid of this thing.
Mm.
Do you not see that? That may be slightly off our topic, but do you not see
Yeah.
that feeling like, oh gosh, can we get rid of the hardware, please?
It's really interesting. I hear, I hear, I hear some vendors saying that.
Okay.
In the forums that I sit in, I don't hear that as much anymore. I feel like that's kind of like so 5 years ago in an odd way.
Oh,
Uh,
good.
But here's what I have heard. There was just an IDC survey that was done, and there's like better data on this that the team could share. But there's just this IDC survey that was done in which a relatively significant portion of the respondents said that they're actively involved in repatriating workloads from public cloud back to on-premises, and they expect to continue to do so. And so I think the the people doing the work, ultimately, here's the thing: there will always be innovators and people consuming at the edges of these things. But the vast majority of the enterprise IT departments, the medium to large size businesses that depend on technology for some part of their business, the folks who are doing most of the buying and most of the implementing and most of the consuming, those folks have an incredibly mixed mode, and they are actively engaged in managing their portfolio of responsibilities across the multiple consumption models and the multiple delivery models that are available. They're very finely tuned, and they're really engaged in a fine-grained activity that I believe will continue this mixed mode going forward. It's kind of nothing new. We've always had, even when we were only on premises in data centers, we would try to have standards, but also more than one vendor. So if one vendor got out of hand, we could, everybody was something. You were a Dell shop, but you also had HP, or because for all the good reasons that have to do with resilience, scalability, functionality, et cetera. And this hybrid cloud is that. It's consuming infrastructure and capacity in multiple modes and being able to flexibly manage and deliver across those modes. And ultimately, maybe there'll be another technology that comes along after that. But
Steampunk, perhaps. Maybe Steampunk will play a role in there. I don't know.
Well, and I think so. So to bring the Steampunk principle in, thank you for the challenge, my friend. So here's the answer, right? If we're right in that mode, if we use the new cloud technology in the old way, the way that we managed Steam, right?
Right.
If we use technology and the electricity and the way that we manage steam, then it won't work, right? We need new modes of operating. But now we can turn those new modes of operating back to our old technology, and things like hybrid engines. I mean, the Prius is a wonderful example of gas and electrical in
it's hybrid.
And it's been more successful than any purely electric car or purely gas vehicle, because that mixed mode is the mode that allows us the flexibility and the range and the capacity and so on. And so this is one of those moments where we're in this transition, and we can take the best of all worlds.
Speaking of the best of all worlds, there's the idea of HCI software and how it works with hybrid cloud. I think about hyperconverged infrastructure traditionally was, storage, compute, networking, virtualization. Somewhere in there where I wasn't looking, they snuck in cloud management. Maybe they was in there the whole time, but is HCI software almost a synonym for cloud management these days, or is that making it a bigger idea than it is? And the real question is, how does HCI work with hybrid cloud?
Yeah. So one of the things that we want to be able to do with our cloud, which is just our place that we operate, one of the things that we want to be able to do is we want to be able to get the best possible use out of our capacity, the best possible performance, the best possible capacity. And so, look, if for example, it's the difference between, let's say that I have 100 barrels of oil to transport across the desert. I can get 100 Jeeps and 100 drivers, and I can drive those 100 barrels of oil individually across the desert. And I might lose, a few along the way, or I can put them all on a single train. And that train can make its way across the desert. It will expend, we now know the metrics on this, 1/100,000th of the fuel. The 100 barrels of oil will arrive more quickly, and so on. It's the same idea when we're talking about hyperconverged infrastructure. Hyperconverged infrastructure is like the train and the train tracks versus the 100 Jeeps of all of these, hey, I've got storage, I'm doing it this way. I've got network, I'm doing it this way. I've got compute, I'm doing it this way across 5 different locations. When we look at hyperconverged, we say, look, I'm using all the power of the engine and all the structure of the tracks to do the heavy lift. By the way, behind all that is multiple different cars with multiple different loads and multiple different storage methods and containment methods and uses at the other end. But I'm putting the infrastructure to work in a way that is most efficient. And that's all that hyperconverged is. So we can convert hyperconverged infrastructure that sits in, public cloud vendor data centers, because at the end of the day, like, AWS isn't magic. There are places where there's hardware, right?
Sure.
And so what we're saying here is we can use the same theory for how we utilize and access resources in the hyperscalers data centers as we do on premise. If we use that same, like the exact same code for how we access storage and compute, an operating system running storage and compute on hardware in a public cloud vendor's data center and or on premise, the minute we start doing that, then we get to behave the way that people do when they spin up a workload in public cloud. We get to write controlling code and operating code once and use it, the exact same code, everywhere. We get to do software defined things. We get to do DevOps in an IT way. And so that capability, it's not rocket science. It's just that underneath the covers, we're addressing the infrastructure in a way that allows us to make the most logical, most efficient use of that underlying infrastructure. And we see that whether we're operating on premises or we're operating something like Nutanix clusters in AWS. We are getting more capacity and better performance out of the exact same hardware components, just by hyperconverging, just by addressing them as a set of shared resources that we have access to.
Well, I guess on a related note, I mean, myself as a tech journalist trying to keep up with things, when I see that long phrase, hyperconverged infrastructure, should I think to myself, oh yeah, that's cloud management? Or should I not necessarily think that?
I think it's fine to think that.
Yeah.
Maybe I would say that enables cloud management.
Okay.
Right. So, because I mean, I can manage a cloud without that.
Right.
Right. But it enables me to interact with the parts of cloud that are, sort of core to the reason why I'm consuming cloud. I'm consuming cloud because I want some flexibility, some scale out, some optionality, and I want some speed. And so hyperconverged allows me to more directly, more intelligently, more efficiently access that capacity, that capability, and to do so in a way that's automated, that's autonomous. Autonomous stuff matters a lot because of the speed and the scale at which we're doing things. And so being able to write code once and interact with infrastructure in a software defined way allows me to operate my enterprise infrastructure at a speed and a flexibility and a level of personalization and efficiency that mirrors how things work in the consumer world, how things work on my iPhone, for example.
So if we look ahead at the HCI market, I mean, they reached some pretty stunning revenue numbers recently. I think it was $2 billion in revenue in Q3 2020. So it's come a long way.
Mhm.
And if we talk again in the year 2025, and we're talking about the HCI market, what will we be talking about on that sunny day in 2025? Where is that market going?
I think we're going to be talking about hyperconverged clouds versus rather
Hmm.
than hyperconverged infrastructure. Um,
HCC. Okay.
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And partially because we're going to be needing a new marketing term, and partially
Right.
because that's a thing, right? But I think that's the potential for us, right? The potential for us is to truly consume across all of these substrates in a hyperconverged way. And the more sort of critical mass we get in lots of different areas of our hybrid cloud, the
Mhm.
more critical mass we get around hyperconverged infrastructure, the more we're able to create functionality writ large. And there is massive value in that, particularly as we look to some of the things we'd like to compute and some of the things we'd like to do. I mean, we're heading in the direction of quantum computing and some
Mhm.
other very interesting areas. At the same time, we're also, we're a little on pause right now with the pandemic, but this potential for IoT
Hmm.
also creates sort of lots of functionality out to the edge, a gazillion points of intelligence
Right.
um, are in the mix and have the potential to be used in support of humanity, in support of commerce, in support of healthcare, in support of education.
Mhm. The idea of the hyper-converged cloud is somewhat sounds almost the same as multi-cloud. We're just very related to hybrid cloud, but it's different. I mean,
Yeah, it is
is
different
yeah.
because
How,
it's
how does
intelligent.
that? It
It's
is different. I
intelligent.
mean,
Yeah.
uh, I just want to make sure I use the phrase multi-cloud. I don't want to get to this interview and not use the word multi-cloud. And
Okay,
so
let's say it. Multi-cloud, multi-cloud. That means that I am consuming more than one cloud.
right.
But it does not, it doesn't indicate on any level that I am consuming more than one cloud in a unified way. For that, you need the term hybrid.
I was with you. Then I got a little confused at the end.
Yeah,
I mean, because I would say multi-cloud, it seems like it has become the default deployment method. I mean, it's like 60 or 70% of companies using multi-cloud. And part of what
it,
you're talking about earlier with the Dell versus HPE kind of thing, people don't want to lock in. I'm not sure
mhm,
multi-cloud really avoids lock in, but
mhm.
how does that work in?
Yeah, I mean, so, and I'm a great lover of doing the work, and I'm a little less fond of all the phrases.
Right,
Um,
right. A lot of
however,
phrases out there. Yeah.
right. However, I haven't actually seen, in technical terms, a multi-cloud deployment. If
Hmm.
I am deploying things in more than one cloud, I deploy things differently in Amazon versus
Right,
in Google versus in Azure,
right.
because the clouds themselves are built on different technologies. It's
Yep.
like saying that I'm doing multi-server deployment on IBM Power and Dell. No, you can't. Those are there's different
Right,
operating systems, different theories of
right.
how those servers run. And so I would no more say I'm doing multi-server deployment on IBM and Dell at the same time using the same code than I would say I'm doing multi-cloud deployment. When
Hmm.
people in industry say, yeah, we're doing multi-cloud deployments, that means I'm consuming capacity from more than one cloud for different workloads, sometimes the same workload, but there's no unified deployment there. What you need for unified deployment is you need a shared operating system, a shared
Hmm.
hypervisor. You
Hmm.
need, or you need, fully developed containerization technology. All of my workloads are running, the exact same way, and pick something Kubernetes or Docker,
Hmm.
and so really that becomes the common layer. But
Right.
but other than that, multi-cloud deployment at the moment technically means I'm deploying stuff in more than one cloud, and I have, I likely have specialized scripts and code, and even sometimes even team members, and so on for each one of those things. Whereas there's some advantages there. The same advantage of having HP and Dell in my data center in the old days. Those advantages are around cost models. They're sort of, comparing one vendor's price against another. However, actually being able to write the code once and deploy it anywhere, there's different advantages there. Those advantages are operating advantages. I can have fewer people on my team. I can have less complexity in terms of monitoring and management. I can have code reuse. I can have faster time to scale. I can have a highly improved resilience, et cetera. And so it's that next level model, which is that sorry, but hybrid model.
Right.
That's the reason for these, 86% of the 3,400 people in IT saying, I want that one. Yes, I want to operate in multiple clouds for cost and vendor resilience, but I also want the operational flexibility that comes from a common operating system, common hypervisor, sort of common substrate against which I do software-defined things.
Well, this is too big a question. I don't want to go too much of the rabbit hole, but the way you've talked about suggests this. One of these intriguing questions, and whether or not there ever will be totally a single pane of glass for all the clouds. So really, what you're talking about with the multi-cloud, it's really not multi-cloud. I get that. Each one is a separate deployment. It seems like someday some company, maybe Nutanix, would say, hey, you know what? We've developed the ultimate abstraction layer. So just get onto this one pane of glass and you can manage all your clouds as if it's really one world. And there's zillions of technical challenges with that. It may never exist. I just had to throw that out there. Is that even possible?
Well, so of course it's possible, because we just imagined it.
Right.
But we need the machine to write a lot of that code. At the moment, the disadvantage of having a single pane of glass is that the information and the interaction is too complex for us people.
Right.
But certainly via machine learning and AI and so on, we could get to a single theory of and center of management. It's just that we would, that would need to happen at that's the equivalent of, the brain that runs the computer, right? We could do the individual calculations, but we really need that processor. We really need that machine intelligence to be able to deal with a single pane of glass. In the meantime, the tooling we have is integration, right? Today, if I looked at a single pane of glass, I couldn't do anything. I'd have to drill down, right? And so ultimately, what we really want is we want a single architecture, a shared substrate, a single theory of how we manage, and then we got to let the machine do the heavy lift.
All right, that is a big topic. One last thing, just sort of a macro view about enterprise IT and consumer IT. Those I know we've generally been talking about enterprise IT in our whole conversation, but I think it's really interesting that it seems like enterprise IT seems to lag consumer tech. Like, I mean, the iPhone has come from zero to like changing our world. Sometimes enterprise IT seems like it moves slower. Like, what's up with that?
Well, we're old and slow. No, just kidding.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, I know, right? That's it, man. No. So here's my perspective. My perspective is that the past was just wiped out, and so I'm not going to opine on whether or not we were old and slow, but today, a huge percentage of the global workforce is working remotely, and so what we're doing is we have dropped enterprise technology into the milieu of consumer technology, and it's swimming in that pool. And what's happening is our employees, in order to be productive, which is, that's core to IT's mission, our employees are having to blend those two, and they're making choices based on how they work, what they're comfortable with, et cetera. And so this has led to a proliferation of consumer tools being intermixed with enterprise tools, and us having to figure out how to secure that, how to support that, how to make that performant, et cetera. In some cases, employees are choosing consumer tools over enterprise tools because they are more productive from their home environments.
Mm-hmm.
And even the enterprise tools are massively changing. For example, we're speaking over Zoom.
Right.
And you may have noticed that Zoom has added some new filters. Now there are all kinds of things. You can put a funny hat on or glasses,
Right.
all kinds of things, right?
Sure.
That's very much Snapchat-like,
It's very
right?
consumer, right?
Yeah, it's very consumer. That's blended in an enterprise app now because the people using that enterprise app and paying for that enterprise app have come to rely on some of those features as part of how they communicate. And so we're seeing that blending happen, and we're seeing an acceleration of that blending happen. But also, in short, IT needs to be less precious, less egotistical about the things that we're offering, and we need to securely and performantly and cost effectively open up our environments, our ecosystem, to all of the players in that ecosystem. We are richer, more productive. Our employees are happier when they are interacting with, the capabilities that we provide in ways that are personalized and ways that involve choice. And ultimately, that's the secret to consumer tech. The secret to consumer tech is that I can choose to use the things that are natural to me. I can choose to use the things that are delightful to me. And look, if we have employees using things that are natural and using things that are delightful, we have math that says those employees are more productive.
Right.
And that is better for our companies and our societies and all of those things. And so, employee happiness ties to employee productivity,
Right.
ties to the interaction design and the way that they are connecting with technology, especially accelerated right now during this time of mostly remote work.
Right. Wendy, I think you have said it. That was amazing. I had to play that back and figure out all the stuff that I learned. There was just a lot there. So thank you very much for sharing your expertise today. I'll send your person the link when it's done. We can all tweet it.
Sounds great. It was really nice to meet you.
Yeah, take care. Thank you very much.
Thanks.